Welcome everybody to another hack show. For today, we got a full house actually. We got 4 people, including myself, coming on tonight, and we're all going to be discussing the music of heart, and we are going to attempt to pick out our 5 individually, our 5 favorite heart albums. So it'll be a pretty interesting show. We got, I'm sure, a lot of different opinions, but we'll figure that out as we go along. But I've got a bunch of guests on, so let me just welcome them. First off, we've got Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility. Hey, Pete, how are you?
What's up, Pac? How you doing? Hey, everybody.
Doing well, man. Doing well. We also have, of course, Mr. Martin Popoff. How are you, sir?
Doing okay, Hack. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And we have Sean Kelly. How are you, sir?
Hey, how are you? Good to see you guys.
Good to see you again. Good to see you. Yeah, so awesome. We are talking about heart, and I don't know. Let's just go around the table. So, Pete, heart, first hearing of them, first impressions of the band.
I don't know, Barracuda, maybe a little before then, maybe Crazy on You. I mean, for me, Heart were a radio band that you heard constantly on FM radio growing up. And I actually didn't see them live for many, many years after I first heard them. So I wasn't like an enormous fan until probably like late 80s, early 90s. And most of us who are like maybe in our 50s now kind of grew up with Heart all over the radio and all over MTV for a while in the 80s. But yeah, I mean, great band. Love the sisters. They're just so talented and a really, really special band for me that I think I appreciate more and more as time goes on.
Yeah. What about yourself, Martin?
Boy, I don't know. That's a really good question. I guess it might have been Dreamboat Annie, definitely in that era. Liked those albums a fair bit, not a lot. Love the Heart sisters. You got our own Veronica and Betty there, right? And the Zeppelin-esque aspect of it, and there was some cool drumming, coming up being a drummer. That was kind of cool. It was kind of a sparse sound, high fidelity though. So they were just one of those bands that was kind of tolerated if you were an angry metalhead. It was like Heart, Journey, Styx. They're okay once in a while, but they're not definitely at the top of the rankings as a kid. Right.
What about yourself, Sean?
1985, full on. Like that was my introduction. 80s Heart was my heart. That's when I was first really getting into music and. Yeah, it was What About Love, when that song kind of blew up everywhere. That's when they kind of came into my, my wheelhouse. And that's when it was. And then, and These Dreams, that was a song for me. That started my love affair with Nancy, that voice, great looks aside, the voice, I was always a big fan and yeah, it was the 80s is where I came to know them. And then I went back retroactively through the years and rediscovered the 70s Heart and fell in love with that too.
Cool. Yeah, my experience was guys are gonna laugh, but I had my uncle who's kind of like an older brother. He's only 6 years older than me, driving around in his Trans Am in the 70s, and him popping in an 8-track. And I'm listening to the Little Queen record with these cool riffs and just, and that was like, one of the first bands I heard that had like, pretty heavy guitar for the time. And I mean, that was my introduction to Heart way back in, what would that have been? I don't know, 76, 77. So yeah, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around. And we've all picked what we think are, what we think are our favorite anyways. This is, just our opinion. our 5 favorite Heart records, and they've got 15 studio albums to choose from. So we picked our favorite 5 from those 15. So we'll just go in order. I got Pete beside me, I got Martin, and then Sean below me. So let's start with Pete. So what was your number 5?
Well, I mean, this was a pretty tough exercise for me. Not so much the top couple, but more the number 5, basically. I like all the Heart albums to various degrees. But I think the Heart album for me that has really kind of grabbed my attention, like in the last 25, 30 years or so, is the one that they released in 2012, which is called Fanatic.
Great record.
This to me was a great, and I don't even want to say return to form because the albums that came before this were pretty strong too. But this was like a return to like hard rockin' Heart. Big ballsy songs, lots of great hooks, and sounds amazing as always, which, she's that one singer you can always count on. And just some amazing, engaging songs. Like the title track is great. Mashallah, 59 Crunch. I like hard rockin' Heart. I like big, accessible, hook-laden Heart as well. But there's something about that voice and those stadium-ready rock riffs that I really like a lot. I love the production on this album. I think it's just got a ton of great tracks, got a couple really good ballads. A Million Miles is great, Skin and Bones. Yeah, Fanatic is my number 5. I listened to this a ton when it first came out, and I still really, really enjoy it quite a bit. I think I enjoy this more than the last 5 albums, which are, like I said, are all really good, but this one always seems to kind of rise to the top for me. So that's my number 5.
Cool. Good pick, man. Good pick.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Martin? What's your number 5?
Well, I went along the same lines and almost went with Fanatic. I definitely wanted to respect recent Heart because I think all of these albums are quite strong. Red Velvet Car is good as well. I could have almost done a toss-up on any of these, but I had to respect them and have one of the later ones. So I went with Jupiter's Darling, which frankly, when you do the math on it, it's essentially the same kind of record as Fanatic. It sounds beautiful as well. That the heaviness is atmospheric and sparse on it. It's got the heavy ones like Fall in Love, I'm Fine is heavy on here. Move On. What else is pretty heavy on here? Oldest Story in the World. But I think what I've decided is still my favorite thing about recent days Heart is what I kind of like about most of the early Heart as well is the more folky songs. So I really like Things on here, which is a lot like Gallows Pole, but Enough is another mellow acoustic one. I Need the Rain. So there's lots of that on here as well. Probably a tiny bit more of that on here than on Fanatic, but they do mix it up pretty well. It's a little less modern sounding than Fanatic, but yeah, I was blown away when I heard Fanatic, and I also think Red Velvet Car was really good as well. So yeah, Jupiter's Darling's got everything I want to hear from Heart. That super analog sound, very organic, but really high fidelity, and just a good mix of those. Everything heavy they do in recent days is really experimental.
Yes,
but the folky stuff is still great folky Heart, and that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a great record. Sean.
Well, it's funny. I vacillated quite a bit between Fanatic and the one I ultimately picked. I'll tell you, I liked Fanatic so much so when it came out, I reached out to the producer, Ben Mink, to send him a note because I was so moved by the sound of that record.
Yeah.
And the urgency of Nancy's guitar. It's cool. I love it when Nancy rocks out. Like, we all know she's an incredibly gifted acoustic guitar player, but she brings something when she's the dominant rhythm guitar player. There's this rumbly Jimmy Page thing that goes on that happens, and Ben really captured that. And we actually ended up connecting in Vancouver when I was on tour, and Ben came to a show and got to talk. So that was really kind of neat. Cool. We connected over that record, his work on that record. So I agree with you guys. I love the later stuff too. I think that it feels like freedom. Like I can hear the freedom that they're enjoying. And I love it when artists that we know as classic rock artists or heritage artists still continue to create. Having said that, I went with Passion Works for number 5 because for me, that is a bridging album. I You know, Baby Lestrange could have been in there for me as well. But like I said, I love the 80s heart. And what I loved about Passion Works, and I think Keith Olsen has kind of said he didn't dig his production work on it, or he doesn't dig it that much, but didn't. But I really do. You know, I'm a sucker for that. I grew up with AOR and that hard rock sound. And I thought that was, I thought the production, like the drums were starting to have the 80s kind of process sound, but didn't go as far as they did by the 1985 record. And so lots of chugging eighth note riffs. How Can I Refuse is one of my all-time favorite Heart songs.
I love that song. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an incredible,
perfect pop song.
Yeah. Really, you know, great vocal by Nancy. I loved Allies too, because I could hear a little bit of the Elton John thing, you know, like they bring in like Elton John, Let It Be era Beatles, and Zeppelin so well. Like they're so dialed in. You can feel the love they had for those artists. And I liked Allies because it kind of always reminded me of a Bernie Taupin and Elton John song. Blue Guitar I thought was cool. Sleep Alone, big chugging guitars. And I liked it because it was just, I can't remember if it was the first, maybe Private Audition, but there was like really where it became Howard Leese and Nancy playing the guitars. So there was a little more space there. And I just, yeah, I'm a fan of Passion Works. I find myself going to it and listening to it. And that's kind of, it was tough trying to pick just 5, right? So I had to be honest with myself. What do I keep going back and listening to? Passion Works keeps coming up for me. So that's what I went for.
Nice. I love that record. The electronic drums though, man. But that, yeah, I mean,
well, you ain't seen nothing yet. 1985 comes along and takes care of that.
It's like when because I mean, I went through the whole, you know, obviously I went through the whole catalog again, and I'm listening. It's like you could tell that was the new toy in the studio, and it was all those electronic drum effects were all there, like in every song. You know. That being said, though, How Can I Refuse? I think is like one of the perfect. It's just a perfect power pop song. The structure, the hooks, it's just everything is there. That I love. That's probably one of in my top 5 Heart songs. I love that song.
Nice.
But I gotta agree with Pete for my number 5. I went with Fanatic as well. You know what? Well, let's talk about Anne. Anne is always, she is my favorite female rock singer, hands down. And I actually like her voice more on that record than the earlier records, because she's got a little bit of whiskey, kind of a little bit of gravel, a little more maturity in her voice. And I mean, it sounds phenomenal. But what's really cool about this record is when you're listening to the riffs and the tracks, especially in you know, for example, Mashallah. I mean, it sounds all kind of sort of, the riffs are kind of disjointed, and the song structure, like the chords and everything, they're kind of like, but I mean, it just works, you know. And when you're listening to that record, it's, you know, you're hearing one riff, and then it's like there's all these surprises. They just, you know, it turns into something else, and then it turns into something else, and then it comes back. Like, it's so adventurous, that record. And when you're listening to it, it's every song is a surprise. You'll hear a part that just comes in out random, and it just, oh, you know, you think, oh, they're going to sit on that, and then they turn into something else. Turns into something else. Like, it's just, as a listener, and you know, and as somebody who tries to write music, you're listening to that and you're like, man, they got so many ideas in one song that for most bands that would be like an album, you know.
Yeah.
It's just that the creativity is just off the charts on that record. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Fanatic. I mean, it's a great album. Great album.
They definitely tried to take some chances and like break the mold that we thought we would always hear from Heart. And there's even, I mean, you were talking about some of the riffs in Mashallah. I mean, it's almost like there's like a weird, slight little like industrial element on some of the songs on that album.
Yeah,
you know, which is pretty.
And there's a little of, I mean, everything they do has got some Zeppelin in it.
Yeah.
Everything they do has got some Zeppelin. And I mean, I'm a huge Zeppelin fan, so I always appreciate when I hear those little tinges of Zeppelin in their songs. So, but yeah, Fanatic for me, number 5. So, Pete, number 4.
All right. Well, my list is going to, I think, be a little predictable from here on out, but I have to go back to something Sean said before. you got to pick the ones that you listen to the most, or that you've always listened to the most. And for me, still listen to the most. And my number 4 is Baby Lestrange, or Baby Lestrange, however you like to say it, from 1980. I mean, look at that album cover. Who wouldn't fall in love with these two women right there? I mean, come on,
That's right.
but it's back to the songs, right? This has some amazing songs. I absolutely love "Sweet Darling." I mean, that just makes me melt every time I hear it. "Even It Up" is a great rocker. The title track is killer. "Silver Wheels," great song. It's pretty rocking, right? But it's still got that pop sensibility that we love from the band. And it might not have the dynamite songs that the couple albums before it had, but I still think it's really, really good, and I still listen to it a ton. So that is my number 4.
Cool. Martin, what do we got for number 4?
Okay, so for number 4, I'm going with Little Queen. I know that's going to be higher on a lot of people's lists, but I've got some contrarian things coming up, I think, maybe. But love Barracuda, of course, as a metalhead. That's their heaviest song, and that's where when I'm always arguing with people about heavy bands, I always say, "Don't Barracuda me," right? Because people say, "Oh, they're so heavy. Have you heard? On it Stars Attention Shoppers? Have you heard X-Ray Specs? It's so heavy." It's like, "Don't Barracuda me," right? Because there are these bands that have 1 or 2 heavy songs, and they think the band is heavy because of that song. And what I love about Barracuda as well, which I always argue about, is for people who say they don't like heavy metal. It's like, well, why is this Heart's most popular song? It's like, you love heavy metal, you just won't admit it, right? Kind of thing, right? But I really like this album because I think it's probably their best sounding album they ever did, and they have a lot of good sounding albums. In later years, it's easier to make a good sounding album, so that's not fair. But for the early days, this is probably their best sounding album. I think it's their most Led Zeppelin-y album as well, with the most, far beyond Jimmy Page acoustic guitar stuff on it, and even like Mandolin and Sylvan Song and Dream of the Archer, kind of a Battle of Evermore thing there. But Kick It Out's a good kind of rock and honky tonk rocker thing. I love Say Hello on here, which is that happy little Caribbean Hawaiian sort of song, and then Little Queen, I think, is one of their more inventive, moving to the hard rock end of things. So I think it's just a real smash throughout. I find Dog and Butterfly a little bit of a disappointment in the songs and the production. And so Little Queen, it always blows me away that this is really technically their second album in a way, right? Because of the whole magazine debacle that goes on. I can never wrap my head around that. It just seems like it's way later in the catalog for me all the time. But love Little Queen, and being right in there in sort of the golden period when I was getting into music for the first time, in a big way, that 77, 78 sort of time. But I just think they really cover that whole Zeppelin-esque thing off well. And the heavy songs on here are some of my favorite early heavy songs by them.
Cool. Sean, number 4.
Well, I'm going to go with the worst sounding album in their catalog. But the album that, I've probably listened to the most, it's the 1985 self-titled Heart. And, it's funny because I'm going back here. This was my introduction to the band. And clearly, those I think there's only, I can't remember, is there only one co-write, or was there one Nancy and Ann right on there? I think the Wolf might have been the only one. Really, this was, but what I love about this is it was a chance. This would have been the end of Heart if they had not gone down this road. We would not be talking about albums like Fanatic. I'm convinced of that. This was a chance at reinvention, and they took it. And what it did, it showed the power of great songs, because What About Love is a great song. Never is a great song. It gave a chance for great songwriters like Holly Knight. Was Diane Warren a writer on there? Diane Warren might have been a writer on one, but Brian Allen and Sharon Alden from Toronto with What About Love, Jim Vallance. I love the fact that it gave the world a chance to hear Nancy Wilson, or Nancy and Ann Wilson. Nancy doing the Bernie Taupin These Dreams, and to me it was. I loved everything about the image too. I know the things that you hear them complain about. it just struck me. It was this really regal, grand image that definitely dovetails with me getting into music for the first time, growing up with video. And I can't separate my emotional self, my teenage emotional self, from my love of that record. Even though when I listen now, it's a cocaine mix if there's ever been a cocaine mix. All top end, like you can definitely hear the drugs in the mix, meaning it sounded like they were mixing for like absolute high end scintillation, right? Like it's just rips your head off. Like the drum sounds are just atrocious. The other thing I'll say that I love about it is Howard Leese. His guitar playing is so elegant and so melodic. If you listen to the solo he does in What About Love, he's got like that kind of Paul Kossoff vibrato. The guitar's always just singing beautifully. So yeah, for those reasons, that's why it's in a number 4 for me.
Wow, cool, interesting.
There's a reason why he's the lead guitar player in Bad Company now, right?
Yeah, right. That's right.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, my number 4, and this might rank higher on most people's list, but my number 4 is Dog and Butterfly, 1978. And one of the reasons why, it's in my top 5 is it has one of my favorite Heart songs on there. It's got Mistral Wind, which is just incredible. It's just so moody and and again, it's one of those things. It's so unconventional. It's such an unconventional song, but again, it morphs, and it, you know what I mean. It's I love unpredictable music, and that is a very unpredictable song again. But but it works. It's a fantastic tune. That means Straight On, of course, is the other big song on there. The title cut it's a beautiful song. It would have ranked higher. I find the other songs on there, it's just an uneven record. The other songs on there don't quite match, some of the others, some of the acoustic stuff. It's not quite there. But it's basically, for me, it's on my list really on the strong of Mr. Wind, because I can't get enough of that tune, man. It's so beautiful and sung beautifully and played, and going back to talking about Nancy Wilson as a guitar player, I think she's really underrated.
Completely.
She's an incredible player, not just acoustic. Amazing acoustic player, but man, she can play a solo, and she can play some heavy riffs. And
I met her and I shook her hand, man, and I'm telling you, the strength in those hands, you can tell. And you watching her play acoustic guitar on Old Gray Whistle Test and everything, when you got a little mic lap big and she's digging in,
yeah,
she's the real deal.
Yeah, I know she's a phenomenal player. But yeah, so my number 4 is Dog and Butterfly. All righty, Pete, what do we got for number 3?
Dog and Butterfly.
There you go.
For a lot of the reasons that you already said, but one thing I do want to point out, and this is something that Martin and I have talked about quite a bit on Sea of Tranquility over the last year or so. Sometimes an album gets elevated because of the strength of a couple songs, right?
Yeah.
So even though there may be stronger albums in the catalog, but because of those songs are so good and you love them so much, it elevates that album a little higher up on your list. Mistral Wind is absolute genius. It's one of the best songs in their catalog. And I adore Dog and Butterfly. I think that's just such a beautiful song. I own 3 dogs. We have 3 dogs in our family. I love butterflies. It's just such a gorgeous song about the naivety of children. And it's just, I can really relate to it. It's so good. But Cook with Fire is great. High Time is a good rocker. Straight On, of course, is great. Amazing. But some of the other songs aren't that fantastic, but you've got 3 or 4 absolutely killer songs for me. And that really just helps this rise up higher than maybe it normally would. But yeah, that's my number 3.
Pete, can I ask you? It's funny, what you just said there, how there's 3 or 4 songs that are just magnificent. But then I find this a kind of a constant thing when I was going through these albums. What I was wrestling with was, how strong are the really great songs? Because I find there's a lot of meandering stuff in there too. And Dog and Butterfly didn't make my list for that reason, but I feel exactly the same way you guys feel about Mistral Wind. And I think that Straight On is probably their best rock song. Like I saw them do that at Massey Hall and it blew my mind. And I'm going, and Dog and Butterfly. I mean, and I love the concept. Heavy dog, butterflies, the quiet one, right? Like the two sides. But man, I just get lost in some of the more meandering stuff, and it's tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Martin.
Well, it's funny. I've been conflicted about this whole thing because even, wanting to have something new in there when I don't really play the new albums all that much. And then I'm almost feeling here with my number 3, which is Dreamboat Annie. There's a cover of that here. But I don't want to get to the end without mentioning how much I love this album. And especially, again, this idea of loving a song so much. There's one on here called Perfect Stranger, which is one of my favorite Heart songs ever. And all the mellow stuff on here I really like. So it's funny. I was looking for a way to wedge this in somewhere. I wanted to bring it up here because I feel, Dreamboat Annie is such a responsible choice. It has to be in here. This is their Van Halen in a way. Where everything, it's the first one, but everything comes together amazing. It's got these really, the really cool, heavier songs like Magic Man and Crazy on You. I love the 3 versions of Dreamboat Annie that just keep coming back. It's so Gordon Lightfoot, that one to me. I've always liked that. Sing Child, I do like and I don't. To me, it sounds a little bit like Malevolent Sticks, like Heavy Sticks. But it's a great recorded album as well. It absolutely sounds really good. I'll Be Your Song I really like, and another kind of hippie folk acoustic sort of thing. This has a little bit of that Seattle to Vancouver feel about the hippies in Vancouver feel to it to me, which I really like. But yeah, good sounding album as well. I feel it kind of has to be in here, but this is for some reason seeing this at my number 3 is when I felt like I really needed to talk about Private Audition too. So there you go. Number 3.
Well, you managed to get it in. So mission accomplished. All right, Sean, what do you got for number 3?
Well, number 3, I'm going to wrap up my love of 80s Heart here. This will be my last 80s one. I'm dodging the bottles and everything. I got the chicken wire up. I'm already waiting for all my bandmates to lean into me. That's okay. I can handle it. I went with Brigade because I thought that Brigade, the production started to come together. And I remember what I loved about this was I remember listening to it in context 1990 against your Wingers and your White Lions, etc. All your W bands, and there was the difference in quality. To me, always came about in the class of the vocals. It always came down to the vocals, and I thought that the songwriting was actually stronger on Brigade than the previous 2 records. Even though Alone is probably my favorite 80s Heart record. I thought Stranded was really big, really great song. I got to tell you. Me and a lot of secretaries probably agree that all I want to do is make love to you. I'm a sucker for chugging 8 notes and clear chimey guitars and that Mutt Lange thing. I love that. And I think the reason, though, once again, I have this attached to the memory of seeing footage of them doing this tour. And it's kind of then they really were dialed in, and they looked not necessarily the sisters, but the band looked like they were having the time of their lives. Like, I think this was like Howard Leese's moment in the sun where he is the king of the world. He's now making all the dough. He's playing, he here's a guitar collector, right? He can now afford, I guess he was doing okay before, but now he's really rocking, right? And the guitars are coming out and he's playing the vintage guitars, the Big Arena Rock show. And yeah, man. I love that record, and I go back to it quite a bit,
He had to have been psyched. He's probably like, yeah, Roger's out of the band now. I'm in the spotlight.
I'm the guy. And he was the guy. He was, even in the mix, if you watch some of the live shows, Nancy was still in there, but not so much on the electric stuff. It was really Howard with his stereo rig cranking through, right? Yeah. So
nice.
Cool. My number 3, I'm going with also Dreamboat Annie. For a first album, I mean, the maturity of the songwriting is off the charts. I mean, there was no with Heart. There was no sort of first records and then they hit their mark. It's like they were Heart from the very first album. They had all the elements right off the bat. It's so mature for a first time out. The arrangements are amazing. The sound of the record is really good. I mean, production wise, I mean, I'm gonna have to disagree with Sean, but that all that '80s. Well, I won't. Baby Lestrange because it came out in 1980, but those mid '80s records, I don't know. I'm not. I can't stand that '80s production value at all. So for me, their best sounding records, '70s and later, '90s and or more recent. But yeah, the record sounds great. I mean, it's got right off the bat. I mean, Crazy on You, Magic Man, the title cuts. I like Sing Child Sing. I think it's a pretty cool tune. Just a fantastic debut from a band on their first outing. They were Heart right from the get go. So yeah, hats off to them. 1975. That's my number 3. Probably going to be ranked higher on most people's list, but for me, it's number 3. All right. What do we got? We got number 2, and we have Pete.
All right, my number 1 and 2 probably could flip flop at any given time, but again, I'm going back to what Sean said way early in the episode about which is the one that we listen to the most. So that kind of makes a distinction for me. But this is a great album, and like Martin said, is it their number 2 or their number 3? Who the hell knows? I always count it as number 3 because Magazine, I guess, officially is number 2. But Little Queen from 1977 is my number 2. Great album, great mix of the light and soft, the soft and the heavy, or whatever, light and shade, whatever you want to call it. I love the way this band kind of mixes up the more acoustic based folky stuff with the pop and the hard rock. I mean, I don't know a lot of bands that do it as well as this. Barracuda, legendary. Sylvan Song is amazing. Dream of the Archer, amazing. Kick It Out, Little Queen. So many. Love Alive is a great song too. Excellent. Yeah. Another great album cover with a great photograph of the ladies. Produced really, really well. Yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic. I love 70s Heart. I like all of Heart, but 70s Heart is where it's after me. My heart's in the 70s when it comes to Heart.
Your heart's in the 70s.
My heart's in the 70s.
Yeah.
All right, Martin, what's your number 2?
Okay, my number 2, I'm going with Baby Lestrange. Love this album. Always loved this album. To me, this is almost like their cool album when the band actually becomes cool. A little bit like a Scorpions Blackout. It also reminds me a little bit of Aerosmith Night in the Ruts, the black and white album cover. And even more so, Even It Up is their No Surprise, their Aerosmith No Surprise, I think. But I love the production on here. It's very kind of sparse but well recorded at the same time. It has kind of a little bit of that ZZ Top intimacy, ZZ Top Tejas intimacy to it, I think. Just a little bit of an obscure production job. And I really like the experimental kind of heavy things on here, like the title track, Baby Lestrange. Strange Night is a little interesting with that tribal thing going on. And what is it called? Break. Yeah, just Break. Not Break Song. Break Song, I think, is a Joe Perry project. Break, which is kind of their punky thing on here, right? But I also really, really love Rockin' Heaven Down, which has a little bit more of that proggy heaviness of theirs. So that's a little bit more of the laid back, epic, Dreamboat Annie kind of heaviness. It's got Sean, you mentioned kind of the Elton John-ness thing. Raised on You is that Billy Joel, Elton John, Bernie Taupin sort of feel. Pilot is like kind of like heavy, lush, folky Eagles. I mean, to me, this just has lots and lots and lots of really good songs on it. And it's just, and it also reminds me a little bit of that. I like the kind of like slight underdog nature here, because this was a little bit of a step back for them in terms of their commercial appeal. They were not so much the it band anymore. There wasn't the same excitement about them. It seemed like they had to work a little harder for it at this point. And it just feels a little more punchy and immediate. And this for years and years was my favorite Heart album. For probably decades even was my favorite Heart album. But I suppose I have a surprise number 1 because it's the one we did a Contrarians episode on that I'm gonna go to for my number one. But I've always loved this album. Again, to me, it's just the feisty fighting heart album again.
You know what, Martin? You've actually helped me articulate something. To me, I just realized it reminded me of the Pretenders, that record. It has that, it's a leanness about that record.
Yep.
And you know what? It probably would have rated a little higher in my list had I had this conversation with you before, because I went back and forth on it. You know, was this the first one that Fisher wasn't on?
Yes.
Boy, is it? Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
So they toughened up, right? Like there was that space, right? Now it's tightened up and it's more of that 2 guitar thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great choice and a great, some great comments there.
Cool.
Well, you're up next, Sean. What was your number 2?
Oh, my number 2, I went with Little Queen. And now that I'm out of the 80s, I've honored my teenage self. I will tell you, Hack, I agree. Look at, I know those records, those 80s records don't sound good, but it's funny. At the time, the 70s records sounded archaic to me. I actually remember it was like, that was like sitting in my parents, you know, with the faux wood paneling. Like that's was the vibe I was getting listening to those records, which is a funny thing, right? Because it's the age you come into music. This is what it was not. There was something about those sounds that was exciting and grabbed us at the time.
Yeah.
You know, but in retrospect, you go back and you listen, and I realized, you know, what I really love, especially after seeing them at Massey Hall doing the 80s songs in a more organic style, that really my heart is also the 70s heart. And so Little Queen to me, there's a few moments that are a little meandering, but really what it comes down to is Barracuda. To me, I mean, I can't think of a more classy, more dynamic hard rock song. Love the guitar interplay. Little Queen, same thing. You know, talk about the Zeppelin thing, the strut and the swagger. It's on there. But it's the intricacy and the emotional depth in the vocal arrangements on Dream of the Archer. That just, it stuns me how beautiful it can be. And when they really focus in on those things, I don't think there's a band that can touch them vocally. I mean, like that blend that those sisters have, and the other guys were in there singing too. And just, there's something about the way that they all collectively found their spot. Once again, I'm a Howard Leese fan. I love that he can be such a utility player too, and come in on keyboards and ancillary guitars and just kind of support the whole structure. Fisher was also a very creative and kind of out there guitar player. He did some, you know, some very strange things, and later records I heard were also pretty out there. But I think that just added to the magic and what I think you said it earlier, Martin, the hippiness of it all. Like, you know, there's still that very much that hippie thing, you know, informing a lot of the adventurousness of it, but also with the polish of, like, you know, the Beatles vocal harmony thing. And yeah, Little Queen's a big one for me, and their second most definitive album to me.
Cool. So when I hadn't listened to a lot of these records in a long time, which is great, because when I went back and I listened to them, you know, you're listening to them with fresh ears. And for that reason, this pick, from my number 2 pick, really went up. And I mean, this top 5 changed about 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, this finally ended up at number 2. And this would never have entered my mind. But going back and listening to it for fresh ears, I just have an absolute new appreciation for Baby Lestrange.
Yep.
Nice. I mean, my God, it's just a great rock record. It's a great rock, and it's got so many different styles of music on it, you know, and I love that. I love that, you know, you're listening to an album and every song doesn't sound like the song before. There's, you know, different flavors as you go through, right? Just gonna look at my notes here a little bit. You know, you got some straight up rocking tunes, you know, Strange Ways, Even It Up. I mean, that's one of their best tunes. Rockin' Heaven Down. You got a really beautiful instrumental that Nancy does, the Silver Wheels.
Yeah.
Just a great variety of material. Down on Me, that song, I'm listening to that and I'm hearing I'm Gonna Crawl, Led Zeppelin. That's what I'm hearing on that song. Raised on You, because I mean the time period this came out, 1980. To me, that sounds like a Billy Joel pop piano song. That's what that sounds like to me. You mentioned Break. It's got a new wave poppy vibe to it. You know that it's some of those songs you can tell they're informed by the period that they came out, that very early 80s sound. Just a solid album with just a solid album and a really great variety of material that keeps it interesting, you know. And again, I mean the performances, the guitar playing, the production. I love the production. This is just a record top to bottom. Just put on, listen to it, for the next 40 minutes or whatever. You're just going to be listening to some great music, you know. And yeah, keeps you interested. So the Bibula Strange for me, number 2. So we're down to our number ones. There we go.
Come on, Hack. Admit it, Hack. You like that album so much because of the hair. Great hair on the front cover, right?
I was a fan of the perm. I got to admit, I love the perm.
Yes. Yeah, I think we all love
the tight curly perm.
We all love the
perm. Well, for my number one, again, like I said, if you've been following my ranking here, it's pretty predictable. But to me, Dreamboat Annie is one of the great debuts in all of rock and roll history. And it's amazing how mature they sound on this first album. And just the kind of the back and forth between the rockers and the more acoustic folky pieces, just incredible. And that voice, I mean, she just sounds so magical. What was she, like 18, 19 on this album, something like that? It's just unbelievable, the maturity of the musicianship and the vocals and the songwriting. And I love the way the album sounds. It's got the classics. I mean, to me, Crazy on You is one of the all-time great songs. Just amazing. Magic Man, amazing. The title track, so good. And again, like Martin mentioned, you got it at a couple points on the album. I love Sing Child. I think it's got a terrific riff. Totally. A lot of fun to play. I thought Mr. Fisher was a really cool player. Yeah, and Soul of the Sea, man. Just so good. So good. I love it. I can listen to this album over and over and over and over again. It, to me, is a drop dead classic, not a weak track on it. So that's my number one.
Cool. Martin, what's your favorite?
Okay, so my number one is Passion Works, and this is the one that I did a whole episode of the Contrarians on, my contrarian choice for favorite hard album, because it is very contrarian. August 20th, 1983, last one for Epic. Keith Olsen. We've got Denny Carmassi and Mark Andes coming in on the rhythm section. I think this has probably 4 of my top 7 or 8 favorite Heart songs of all time. One of them, no surprise, is How Can I Refuse? One of the greatest Heart songs ever. But yeah, I think late in the album, 3 pretty mellow ones in a row: Heavy Heart, Love Mistake, and Language of Love. 3 of my favorite Heart songs of all time. I love the production on this. I love that they're fighting because Baby Lestrange didn't do well. Private Audition was a bomb. This is the last one for Epic. They're fighting for their lives on this, and they come out absolutely fighting with an uber commercial album that Pete and I talked about this on a Heart. It was the Through the Decades thing, right? Where this is an album where you listen to it and go, how was this album not a smash hit in 1983? It was bigger in Canada. It was number 7 in Canada, but number 39 in the States. But I just think everything about it is has got all the good habits of 80s production and none of the bad habits. You're right, Hack. It does have Denny hitting those Simmons drums, those tom-toms, but the rest is pretty much acoustic drums all around here. It's a little bit like Rat, Wanted Man, Bobby Blotzer, the big fat acoustic drums, and then a little bit of that in there. But I'm fine with it. I just think it was all done quite tastefully, and it ages quite well. I really like Sleep Alone, super heavy rocker on here as well. Together Now is one of their kind of prog-ish ones with some Zeppish stuff going on there, and melody and sticks and all that stuff, and a few changes. But and Allies, Jonathan Cain, again, one of the better, I think, of those big AOR ballads. I'm very less accepting than you are, Sean, of those big ballads. I don't like any of those albums moving forward. Those are the only ones I'm confident wouldn't make my list, right? Right. But I love what they do on Allies. But absolutely, the unsung Heavy Heart and Love Mistake, and Language of Love, 3 of my favorite Heart songs of all time. So yeah, I just think they do everything right on this, and they sound like world-beating winners, even though for some indescribable reason, who knows why, probably label politics, moving from one label to another, all of that, band member changes. This just was not a big album. One last thing I want to mention is there's the funny story about Danny Carmassi joining the band. And I've heard, kind of on the down low or the grapevine or whatever, that he made a very, very lucrative deal joining the band and becoming like a big part owner of the band, even though he's just the drummer and he's not writing. He had a big stake in Heart. And all of a sudden, when they explode over the next three and a half albums, whatever it is, he did quite well for himself. Just as, the drummer from Montrose joining this band, Montrose, Sammy Hagar, whatever. Right. And so I always thought that was quite funny. And I love what he does on here. I love his straightforward Dave Holland, drumming across this record. But yeah, I just think it has tons of charm. And again, that whole thing about loving certain songs so much that it makes that album huge for you. For me, it's those 4 songs. So Passion Works.
To Martin's point, I think it's a real travesty that an album didn't do well. And you have to wonder if they would have decided to kind of repackage that album in between the really big albums.
Yeah.
Title it something different and just lay it back, throw it back out there. All the people who ignored it back in the early 80s, I think would have bought that up in droves.
Well, their old label could have done that, right? They could have put a new cover on it and relaunched it a few years later. That would have been a great idea, right? Yep. That whole, it's not a label thing, but that whole AC/DC Dirty Deeds being released in 81, after Back in Black again, right?
Yeah.
So you're right. That would have been pretty cool.
Didn't Johnny Moon get a second life on a later Heart record?
I think so.
Nancy said you missed it. Like, we missed what I was trying to get at, the Floydy vibe.
Well, when they redid a bunch of their songs on what's that last Heart album called? The one that is just kind of redos
Beautiful Broken
that we don't even count really in this whole thing. I think it might be on that, but I do remember her talking about the strength of that song. Yeah.
But getting back to drumming for a minute, that his name escapes me, but their original drummer was phenomenal.
DeRoche?
Oh my God. That guy was those early, those 70s Heart records, the drumming on that is just impeccable. It's awesome. He propels a lot. The rock and stuff, Barracuda, like any of those 70s rockers, that guy is just playing some amazing beats.
The best thing he ever did is that one fill on Barracuda where he ends it and you hear those 2 cymbals go real quickly. Fading away. That's beautiful little part on Barracuda.
Martin, did he overdub toms on the end of Crazy on You? Or is that all happening?
Oh, I see what you
know
mean.
What I'm talking about just before the last chorus?
Yeah.
It kind of goes into this. It starts rolling on itself, and I always wondered, like, was it just a miking thing, or did they actually overdub it? Because if he didn't,
listen to that again.
Yeah. He's a hero. He's a hero anyway.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we're down to the last one. What's your number 1, Sean? What's your favorite?
I went Dreamboat Annie. And you know what? Because to me, at the end of the day, when you sit back and look, what's the album that really defines what these 2 artists are all about? It's almost all there, fully formed on that record. Yeah. You've got the hard rock guitars, but to me, it always comes back to Nancy, who I first fell in love with because of the flaxen hair and the 80s moves. But really, it's that acoustic guitar mastery that she infuses in there, brings an element of class, but she's so authoritative that those acoustics stand up against those hard rock guitars. When I think of Crazy on You, as much as there's I'm also thinking like to have one of those parts would be amazing. To have both of them come together is a dream. And then on top of it, you've got the interweaving lead guitar things with the harmonics and all the stuff they do, and and Magic Man and the note choices and the guitar tones, those singing beautiful fuzz tone guitar tone, like just so beautifully recorded and captured. And like you said, Hack, the drumming. And Steve Fossen, the bass playing, man, locking in, everybody finding their part and honoring this already fully formed idea. That's why. And I will say this: there's probably too many Dreamboat Annie pieces on there. I think they only needed one. I don't think we needed to hear it a whole bunch of times. But I will say this: the first reprise, like when the band kicks in, I don't think there's a more beautiful piece of music. I just absolutely love that song. And it just takes me someplace. So for that and many reasons, that's my number one.
Nice.
Cool. So I was mentioning the story about the 8-track when I was a kid. This was the 8-track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, still my favorite record. My introduction and still my favorite Heart record. Barracuda. Come on, Roger Fisher. I mean, Dundee. I mean, all those harmonics and just the interplay with the guitars. It's sick. I heard an interview with them, and they were talking about where they got the idea for that riff from, and that came from This Flight Tonight from Nazareth. That's where they got the idea for the jung 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 jung, right? That's where that came from. But just exceptional guitar work on that song alone. Kick It Out, of course, on there as well. Great rocker. Like most of their albums, you got a mix of the acoustic and the electric. The acoustic songs on this are really like when you're talking about meandering, Sean, for me, it's a lot of their acoustic stuff. But on this record, Love Alive is
beautiful,
incredible. You mentioned Dream of the Archer, Treat Me Well, just absolutely beautiful songs. And this for me is like this record is like Led Zeppelin 3. It's got some heaviness, and then it's got the acoustic stuff. It's got the mandolin, in some certain places. It's just a fully formed, beautiful record, top to bottom. With one of their heaviest songs, Barracuda. And one thing about Heart, I mean, I've heard Barracuda a million times. I don't get ear fatigue from Barracuda, nor do I get it from Crazy on You or Magic Man or Straight On or Even It Up or How Can I, because there's so much going on in those songs. If you really listen to it and you listen to the part, like you were saying, Sean, they all find their parts and how they all gel together. There's so much going in there that you'll listen to it and you'll almost always pick out something new that you didn't hear the last time, or just have another appreciation for the musicianship of that band, because they're phenomenal musicians, and not to mention the singing is off the charts. But yeah, Little Queen for me was my number one, 1977. So that's probably the year I heard it, Little Queen. Nice. So there you go.
Beauty.
So let's go around and let's wrap up the show. Pete, anything you want to? Pete's like, let me get my Excel spreadsheet. This is what I got going on in Excel. Oh dear Lord.
God. Well, Martin and I will be doing part 2 of our look at the album cover art of Hypnosis on Friday morning. So that is upcoming. But otherwise, today on the channel, I must have reviewed about 10 new albums from all sorts of different bands. What do we got? George Harrison, All Things Must Pass, new remix, progressive metal, Altesia, a British band called Quill, new Gong live album, new Caravan album, new album from Cynic, all sorts of stuff. So yeah,
we'll talk about the Monday thing, the special.
Yeah, thing. So Monday. So for anybody watching who maybe frequents Sea of Tranquility occasionally, we're going to be doing like a kind of like an all hands holiday gathering. So folks that appear on the various shows on the channel, like the Hudson Valley Squares and In the Prague Seat, the Guitars Corner, and all these shows that we do. We're trying to get as many folks on a Zoom call together to wish our viewers a happy holidays. And everybody's going to be talking about their favorite moment on Sea of Tranquility, either that they participated in or one that they've watched and they really like a lot. So it's just a kind of like a thank you to the viewers and wish everybody happy holidays. So, but it'll be fun for us because we've got folks who don't appear with certain people on the channel. It'll give an opportunity for everybody to be on one call together and interact with each other, which is kind of neat. So.
Cool.
One big happy family on Sea of Tranquility. So
It's a big family, man.
yeah,
You're gonna run out of Hollywood squares on that thing, I think, on that show. So what about yourself, Martin? What's coming up with you?
Boy, I guess coming out eventually will be the Judas Priest of visual biography, UFO visual biography. We're redoing the first Yes one and doing it in conjunction with a second. So we're doing a Yes visual biography that goes from 1982 to 2022. So 30 years there. I've got a David Bowie book that's been finished for a long time. That's going to be really, really a plush, good-looking, well-designed book. So that's coming at some point. Other than that, just got in the Hawkwind visual biography. A couple other things I want to work on starting up, but yeah, got the Hawkwind, got the Heap, got the Lizzie. Bunch of stuff came in from Weimer. So yeah, martinpopoff.com for the books. And then Contrarians, we're still busy doing a lot of stuff with Marco. And then once a week, I've got the podcast History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. And the last one was, oddly enough, about electronic drum sounds and sampling and mixing acoustic and other stuff. And my favorite examples, 5 examples of flagrantly electronic drums that I really like.
Oh, that's cool.
Cool. What about yourself, Sean?
Well, I've had a couple of things come out. I did a collaboration with the Canadian Brass recently with an album called Canadiana. We actually covered the 2112 Overture for Brass Quintet. And I, myself and my friend Tim Timlick, we provided the rushiness of it all. And did a couple other things there. I had Lee Aaron Christmas album. Finally got a worldwide release in Japan and in Europe. Almost Christmas, so that's out. My band Trapper, we actually here. M. Griner and I put out a beer with Gateway City Brewery called M and Sean's Electric North. What's that?
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. We have an EP come out, a Trapper EP come out a couple of weeks ago called Songs from the Electric North. And always lots going on. New Year, Lee Aaron, Coney Hatch gigs, Rough Trade. So just trying to keep busy, man. Keep rocking and finish my book. I got my second book. Martin, I don't know how you do it, but I don't know how you promote the way you do with such high quality. I take my hat off to you. I'll be phoning you to cry pretty soon as I tear my hair out trying to get this one done. But that's going to be out through ECW in 2023.
Cool. Nice. Well, so folks, if you want to help support the Guitar Hack channel, I have links below for Guitar Hack merch. I got t-shirts, I got hats, all that. Everything's 20% off until December 26th, which is Boxing Day in Canada and the US. They don't have Boxing Day, so I'll say December 26th. I can't believe the US doesn't do Boxing Day. But anyway, Boxing Day is like our Black Friday in Canada. What else? I got some original music. I will have a new song coming out at some point this week. Check out my playlist for all my original music. It's also available on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify. It's all there. Guitar Hack. You'll see. I think I'm up to 15 right now. There's number 16 will be coming out this week. So, and a week from tonight, I will be doing a Christmas show. So check that out, 8:00 next Wednesday. So I want to thank these gentlemen so much for coming on and doing the show. You guys always rock. You guys always make this a real fun night. I want to thank everybody for watching. We got some good numbers today. So folks, in the comments, let me know what are your favorite Heart songs Heart albums. Put them down below. And if I don't see you before then, everybody have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And guys, hang out for a bit, and we will see you. See you next Wednesday. Right. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks again.
Take care.